Welcome, everybody, to our second episode of Unbind with Bindable. And today's topic is the digital future of insurance. What's next? It's a big topic and one that I think is front of mind for most of us on a daily basis. And actually, in some cases, it might actually be keeping a few of us up at night. So we're at a critical time. We're at a critical time. We're tech, very apropos that happened. But we're finding that there's the providing like a great opportunity to tech's improving efficiencies. It's getting us closer to customers, and it's actually providing a broader market access than ever before, not just in insurance, really in any industry at this point. So what we're looking at today is, how are we going to be internally framing an opportunity within your own organization? So we have access to all these tools. How should you be looking at that from your own perspective within your own company? How does that match up with the ever evolving customer demands? And really, what's next? Where do you begin? So to tackle the topic and provide us some insights and guidance is someone that I look to in our space as a thought leader and change agent, and that is Mr. Mark Rieder. Mark, thanks for joining.
Hey, Jocelyn, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so Mark is actually the head of innovation at NFP, and Mark champions, develops, institutionalizes the innovation process for NFP, both inside and outside the organization. Having served in the employee benefits industry for over 25 years, Mark is a what-if thinker focused on helping companies rethink their process and adapt to the changing needs of the customer and in the market in general. So I got through your intro there, Mark. I'm proud of myself, and I love your title, by the way. And I also love the what if thinking. So just plays really well.
I don't know, 5 years. That makes me feel really old, but
I know it's all right. I feel like in insurance that could be actually a junior role, 25 years. We have a lot of tenure in our space, which is great, and which is really what pulls together how we blend what we've all been doing for decades with what we see coming on the horizon. So I've been looking forward to the interview, mostly because every chance you and I connect, you're generous enough to share your industry insights, your predictions, and really you always kind of have me thinking what is next. And before we dive in, and this was Mark's idea, so I'll credit him with this. And if it doesn't work, then I certainly will credit him with it, which is we're going to do a quick poll for our attendees. And the poll is actually going to be popping up onto your screen right now. And the poll is going to be a choose your own adventure approach to this podcast. So really what we're looking to gain is insights into what you want to talk about today, what you really want us to focus on. It also just lets us know what's top of mind for our listeners and for our industry. So we will probably touch on most of the topics, but if you could vote now on what jumps out at you, the three options being digital transformation, tips and strategies, how to balance digital and human interactions, and of course, future-proofing, how to keep up with changing consumer behaviors. So give everyone a few seconds to respond. And one other thing I do want to point out is that we do have a Q&A button at the bottom. So anytime during the podcast, if you want to throw out a question, if it's a good one, we will read it. No, we'll take anything. So if you throw out a question, we're happy to tackle the topic. So let's pull back for a second, Mark. How did you get into insurance?
I mean, like most of our audience and everybody in our industry, I was coming out of high school and was super excited about insurance and thought that was the only major that I would want to go forward with. But obviously,
right, you dreamt of it. Yeah.
I don't know that anybody got into insurance by plan, to be honest with you. But I was a finance major coming out of college. It was going to be Joe Wall Street. It was that time of where people were swarming towards Wall Street. Stock market was going well. And kind of stumbled into a financial planning organization that allowed us to open our wings and really do what we wanted to do to build a business. And there was a colleague of mine that was calling on companies to talk to them about their corporate benefits. And I was doing individual insurance and investments, and there was this kill to eat type mentality, and you had to continue to work and meet with people at their kitchen tables and then call all day, and wasn't how I envisioned coming out of college and going to work. So started this business about 6 months after graduating, went out on our own, a couple of folks from our business that met and said, hey, we could tackle this group marketplace. And we did so in calling on companies and focusing on technology, actually, in the insurance brokerage space, corporate benefits, leading with benefits administration. And that was a differentiator for us to pick up business. We were young in the business, probably 22, 23, but it allowed us to come in with something different that was being done in the industry. In the late 90s, people weren't talking about Ben Admin that much. And we built our business off of that. And 2002 sold to NFP, which is my current employer. We're a global insurance broker, and about 7,000 employees now. And I play the role of head of innovation, and have continued to focus on technology to advance our business from early days back when we started the business, and that morphed into HR technology, which then morphed into the need to focus on InsurTech and FinTech and not just HR tech, which then led to our innovation efforts. And I was lucky enough to be asked to kind of lead that charge.
That's fantastic. And I love that. I love that, you really, I think it's so critical in today's world to have, been involved in the evolution of where we stand today, because you have that perspective of how it's always been done, but then you're blending that with all of the tools that are available to be able to incorporate into selling more insurance and getting in front of people. And I think our poll is actually, poll results are back.
Did anybody actually respond, or is this a flop?
Well, I don't know. I mean, at least I voted, so I know what I'd like to focus on. So what we're seeing here is it looks like we are going to it's a split, of course, because that's how it would go for me. I would, but we're going to actually look at. So let's dig into the first one, which is that balancing the digital and human. And I do think that's really critical because, and you and I talk about this a lot, like the quote to bind process, being able to seamlessly never touch insurance. And it takes you longer to put a credit card number in than it does to answer questions, which is great. And I think a lot of us feel like that's the ultimate potential, but there's this in between where there's a lot of interaction. And I think the advent of like a digital marketplace, it does enable the customer to sift through endless options, but where do we come in and where do you balance that ability to get in front of customers with maybe more traditional approaches?
Yeah, I mean, I've been battling with this for years, and even on the HR technology side, at a variety of conferences, you hear folks come up and talk about the fact that we're in a people business, and it's really difficult to look beyond that. You shouldn't look beyond that, and the fact that technology can't be all things to all people. People still want to have human interaction, and 100%. I don't think that anybody in the technology space thinks that humans should go away. With the technology that is coming to market that we're able to bring into our workflow is there to enhance the work we do on the personal level. Take the mundane BS out of your workflow. Nobody likes to fill out an application. Nobody likes to push paper. Nobody likes to do those manual processes that technology is coming in to be able to replace. And when you can eliminate that, you now have the ability to focus on human interaction if that buyer wants it, right? So I don't love the model where there is no, toggle out to a call center or be able to talk to somebody, because many times people want counseling and they're not understanding what is being presented to them, especially in the insurance space. And that's fine. So give that option, but they certainly don't want to get onto that call when they toggle it out and answer 25 questions that maybe they already answered, or maybe even if they hadn't, they know is available to the person on the other end of the line. So, when I focus on technology and human interaction, I think you just have to set your focus on what are we talking about the technology doing and where can the humans still play. There's room for both, and there should be both of them in the equation.
No, I think that's a great point. Are there examples that you run across, that sort of you're experiencing that hybrid, maybe even outside of insurance?
I mean, I think in the work that we do with you and Bindable, I think the perfect example of we're working to enrich the data set of the buyer that's taking the journey to purchase auto, home, renters, whatever it might be. And there are public sources for data that make that application process a lot more streamlined if you bring the information into the flow. So if I go on to quote coverage and I can put in my name and utilize a tool to populate my address, to populate the drivers that are on my policy, the VIN numbers for the automobiles that I'm looking to put. There's some folks out there they might say, oh, that's a little weird, the fact that that data is available, but it is. Okay, we can't get beyond the fact that that data is available. It's been being gathered since the minute your parents were using credit cards and coupons, right? So
yeah, we're all an algorithm, really, to some extent.
It's out there, so we can either fight it and say it's weird, or we can embrace it and utilize it to make that better experience. And if you do that, then when you get to the end of the road and they're not quite sure about their options, then potentially provide that buyer with the option to speak to somebody to hone in on the options that are available to them. But that beginning process, let's get rid of it if we can. And I think insurance companies should be looking at that too, by the way, not just your platform, but the insurance companies have access to data as well, and they can chip in.
Well, that's it. I was going to say, what could an insurance from even a product standpoint, looking at how do they stand out? How do they differentiate? Because I think you're right. Sometimes it's like the platform that's the distribution, but the pipes we're connected to from a product standpoint, it seems like there'd be a lot of opportunity there too.
I think so. I mean, I think they have almost a better opportunity to enhance. Listen, I think everything goes back to underwriting, right? And we're not going to eliminate the need for insurance data, and data is king. And our job as insurers is to mitigate risk and to assess the information. But now more data is available than ever before. The last, there's statistics out there that 90% of the world's data has been created over the course of the last couple of years, which is a mind-blowing stat, but it's true. And so the insurance companies, just as we'll call it brokers and or tech platforms, the two of us are thinking about bringing data in to better the user experience, so can the insurance company. So if there's, let's call it 50 data elements that they need to underwrite, and they're going to gather or have their own method for bringing 40 of them in, and they need 10 that are questions that they need to get from the buyer, well, what a better experience for me typing in 10 things than 50. So I think that they could take the same approach, and I think there are companies that are doing that, and I think they're the ones that are going to shine and move to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. And you even see the MGAs coming out with some of the tools to sort of, give those carriers an option of how they can, really start to inform their underwriting further and get them a little bit closer to the customer themselves. And it's funny, even like the human and machine element or data tech element. I think about like the grocery store when I go in and there's like the self checkout line, which I never use because I frustrate myself and I can't figure it out. And, I usually end up having to call someone over anyway. But, meanwhile, my husband is like, that's where he goes to every time. We have like a debate. And so I think having both paths is really critical,
Yeah, I'm self checkout all the way. I like to refine my bagging skills from when I was a teenager. So I actually get in trouble because I'll go in with a full cart if I can.
That's right. No, I think that's awesome. Well, and one of the other topics that has come up is that future proofing, like consumer demands. And I think we're really sort of hitting on this, but do you see the consumer demand evolving, for how you acquire, like how people acquire insurance? Do you ever think it's going to be bought, not sold? And what's our industry's responsibility really in shaping that? So I think, it's a big question, but.
So I do. I think there's a myriad of products that are out there, right? So I can't say that this holds true for every product. Like permanent life insurance, probably not bought, right? Probably sold because there's a lot of explanation on why you would want to go that path as opposed to term. But for a lot of products, I think that they will be bought. And I think that the buyer is all focused on their experience. And it's evident by the Amazons of the world coming into our business. I think your platform and other digital tools that allow us to engage with a buyer digitally and give them a better experience is being driven, not just for efficiencies within the insurance space and the brokerage space, but more so to meet the client and the broker or the buyer, should I say, where they are. I think they've become accustomed to buying a lot of things online that they never used to. And now even more so post-COVID, you're talking about, shopping for groceries, which took a little bit for people to turn the corner on. Talking about visiting with physicians, which was for quite some time a really hard thing to change behavior on. So the buyer is ready. I think our job in the industry is to take off our insurance hat from time to time and put on our buyer hat. There's so many folks that look at, I'll give a perfect example. You're dealing in what we'll call the personal personal line space, right? And when you talk about that, people think auto, home, renters, pet, whatever. A buyer knows nothing of delineation between those products and a telemedicine product, or a health insurance product, or a dental plan, or a mental wellness app, or some childcare. They just know those as benefits and purchases, and they don't want to have to go to 5 different places to do it. So forget about the fact that we've thought of the insurance industry in a certain way. Drop that and consider yourself as being a buyer, and what do you want to do? So I think that's our responsibility to take that insurance hat off from time to time and rethink what it is that we do and how we do it. And I do think if we don't, the buyer is going to drive behavior, and we're going to be out of luck soon with the new players that are coming into market.
No, I think it's a great point, because you have, first of all, with the digital journeys like Bindable and NFP, really leveraging, we know where customers drop off. We know where their questions are. We know when they need to make a phone call. We know if we put one question here and one later, where those drop off. So I think some, issues or errors maybe that companies can make along the way is that they build a digital solution, which is, a customer facing solution, and they like high five and they're done, and they're like celebrate and go on with their day, but it's never done. And I think that's like literally the first step, and then it's that refining, that calibration, because you have a level of transparency that you've never had before. And so yeah, I think we have to listen a little bit closer.
In addition to that, I would say, you hit on something there. There's a difference between, I think, digital transformation and digitizing your process. I think a lot of our industry says, hey, we're going to take our existing process and throw some technology on it. Yeah. And that's what their answer is. Digital transformation really requires us to rethink the process, not do things the same way we've done them, but with a computer.
Yes.
Do it with a computer, and then maybe a little differently. So I think all of that should be considered as people charge forward.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, and one of our listeners had written that there isn't a finish line. I think it's a really valid point. And I do think when you look at the founders, of some of the insurtechs in the space that are creating products, there are certain products that have innovated faster, like renters, the homeowners. And I think that's because, or the theory or philosophy would be that the founders tend to trend a little bit younger and what they've had an interaction with. So now we're starting to see life insurance become more disruptive, and hopefully soon enough health insurance really, being tackled a little bit greater. But it is interesting looking at who's solving the problems and why. Like founder stories is really important to me, because they're typically consumers who had a rough experience or challenge and saw that as their road in, to fixing.
100%. You alluded to the digital native, right? The person that's been living in that digital world for their lives. I will say, as much as that holds true, I would also add to that the insurance industry and the professionals that have been in for the 25 plus years have a lot to bring to that startup community, because insurance is not as it appears to be always. Right. So that's why I think you're not seeing you saw early days, I think, a lot of digital players coming in and trying to disrupt and thinking they were going to tackle an industry that on the surface, you'd say it's archaic. It's got old processes. If you look at the rest of the world, we're moving, 10 times faster than this industry that has a bubble around it. We'll pop the bubble and we'll be rocking and rolling. And that doesn't happen because of legacy systems, because of, relationships that is founded.
Regulatory. Yeah.
All of that stuff. So I think the partnership for, legacy insurers or brokers to partner with and really help rethink their journey with those tech startups is where is critical. I think that's where you're going to find the recipe for success. Not necessarily one or the other per se.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the ability to test and learn a little bit too, where, and it just sort of like we're saying with the digital front end of just creating it and being like, I'm done. And you're really not. It's similar with products, in products, it is hard. Product being insurance. I usually refer to product being tech, but product being the insurance products themselves, they're filed, right? So it's like I have a filed product and oh my gosh, to undo this and redo that and leverage tech. to inform the underwriting, it can be it needs to get easier, to some extent from a regulatory standpoint, where, the products themselves can hit market faster and adapt. But that tends to be an ongoing challenge.
For sure.
What trends are you following closely in the industry? Is there anything in particular? It could be outside of our industry, if there's something that you look at as a parallel.
There's a couple different things that I'm really excited about, or a lot, should I say. And listen, anybody that's followed the insurance industry, and as I referenced before, there's been a bubble over it for years. It's really why I've stayed in the path that I've stayed in, because I saw huge opportunity with an industry that has been much a laggard in any type of adoption of technology or use of data in a digital fashion. We've always been focused on data. Heck, insurance is about using data to mitigate risk. So the availability of data I mentioned before, and the rise in technology, Internet of Things and Bluetooth technology, being able to bring more data, AI, machine learning, be able to help companies act on that data in a real-time fashion to then drive decisions, drive policy, drive affordability, drive user experience. That is all super exciting to me to watch. And I'm just excited the speed in which I'm seeing things happen now. Again, post pandemic, I think the acceleration has been such that you're seeing a lot more things happen a lot quicker. And I'm hoping that it doesn't slow down. I don't see it slowing down. The last thing that is less, I'll call it insurance lingo that I'm excited about is embedded insurance. It is, and for those of you that on the line that don't really know the definition, it's bringing the insurance product into the work stream or the offering or the connection of and really an unrelated, non-insurance related industry. So a digital buyer that exists somewhere else, whether they're buying a mortgage, whether they're buying using a platform to manage their properties or to run their small business or to bank. They're a buyer, they're a user, they're experiencing, just like Amazon taking you down a path from at one point in time selling books and now it's everything. They're taking this buyer down a journey to in a positive and expanding off of that positive experience to bring other products to the table when they're needed. And I think the insurance industry, as I mentioned, hasn't been a really great user experience to date. So these outside companies are capitalizing on this buyer experience and saying, hey, what else can we bring to the table to help them protect their business that we're helping them grow, or insure their assets that we're helping them build? And that's insurance. And so You're seeing a lot of new players coming to the market that never you would have thought were going to be positioning insurance as a product. So we're pretty pumped about that. We see a lot of new markets opening up and some new channels.
Yeah, I think it's like that ecosystem too, another buzzword, but where it's like tying together. It doesn't always have to be the risk-based product. It could be that preventative measure. I think we're seeing your home as a coach, which is that Bluetooth connected Wi-Fi where they know when you wake up, when you're going to sleep, how much exercise, and being able to give tips and advice. I mean, it's again that comfort level between what's available and what's possible with what the customer actually really wants people to be involved in. But like in home, you're seeing more services and just general change your air filter, reminders, things like that to helps avoid the catastrophic claim as well, which it really plays in everyone's favor. The more robust customer experience, offsetting the risk itself, and also creating that nice little ecosystem stickiness around the consumer.
And just a point of clarity, we're not talking about just some association that has some products that they're offering on their website. Like that's been around for a while. That's like a lead gen strategy. We're talking about somebody that's engaged with a tech platform in a SaaS model, or is in the buyer moment at that time and then being offered something else. There's a difference between the two, and one I believe is going to be much more successful.
Yeah, and I think to your point earlier, consumers do expect an experience they have with another industry, even if it's buying a car, which you can now get from a vending machine. You do, and then I buy my tire, wheel service, or vehicle service contracts. There's you get used to that. So when you go and you're like, my homeowners, okay, well, do you have a home warranty? Do you also have an umbrella? Really just being able to get ahead of that with the customer and presenting a single solution instead of making it feel like they're having to piece it all together and ask the right questions or hope they get the right agent to guide them in that.
100%.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And I mean, how do you see, because I mean, you do a fantastic job with this at NFP, and you guys are really in the midst and even really far along in your digital transformation. But how do partnerships play into that? You know, you hitting on that with embedded, but obviously lots of opportunities, you know, that come about. How do you see partners taking this to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's opened all new channels for us and new partnerships that we maybe didn't think of before. Actually, even our own client base, when we look and see what they do, are they now a potential partner, not just a customer, because of the industry that they're in, and we never used to think of them in that fashion. You know, I think there are industries out there. The reason why they're coming down this path and looking at other products to sell to add top line revenue is the fact that our world has changed. And, you know, I'll give an example. We'll call it like I don't know, call it a Walmart or a CVS, anywhere, Walgreens, whatever. You know, used to have these candy bars on the side of the aisle, right? So that when you went down that aisle with your child, after you bought all your supplies, they'd rip them off, throw them on the counter, and you'd be suckered into buying them all, right? So there's additional revenue for them while they're coming down that journey. We're kind of the same thing right now, but guess what? People aren't going to the stores as much anymore. They were forced to not be able to go to the store. So now how do I, as a company, replace that lost income? Because I think that lost income was probably significant. And now they look to a digital buyer. Am I going to necessarily sell them a candy bar online? No, because the kids are the ones that force that initiative. So now what else do I do? Oh, well, let's look at an industry that maybe hasn't been that digitally savvy. Insurance, ding, 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 ding. I mean, that's my theory. It may be off.
Yeah.
But
no, I mean, I think you're right. I think, you know, we count on an add-on sale. We count on, you know, just an inadvertent yeah. But how do we package that to recapture some of that potentially lost revenue and also make it a better experience is critical. So what are some examples?
I mean, for the insurance folks that are out there, they need your partnership, right? I mean, there is, again, going back to my point before, the insurance industry isn't that easy to navigate. You need to understand product. You need to understand how to bring product to market, who the players are. You need to have carrier contracts. There's licensing and all that fun stuff to be a part. There's a part of the equation. So it doesn't mean that these partners can automatically just stand up their own entity. You know, which is why I think this brings an opportunity.
Oh, I think that's a critical part because and I think you've certainly, and I know I've talked to a lot of different brands that have this aggregated access point to customers, and they're like, this is the natural next step. And they've usually gone in 12 directions, hired a bunch of different people, and then they come to you going, okay, I don't know what I'm doing here. And with a relatively low lift, NFP is able to come in and really provide some turnkey and also just some learnings, you know, do they even want to make a big capital investment in this? Is there a period of time that you just spin up a front end and start testing and learning and before the big investment's made? But sure. I think it's critical that that people don't underestimate how much it does take. We make it look easy, but it's so are there other examples just in your day-to-day life of organizations or, you know, even places you go that are just doing it right, like that are, you know, really something that you emulate, or I'm sure you're always picking up little tidbits as you're out and about of different ideas.
I mean, that's kind of my nature, is just to look at things and figure out how to borrow from them. I mean, you know, everybody would say what Amazon has done or what Netflix has done in actually using data to drive their model, but they've really also focused on user experience. So when I talk about a lot of the initiatives that we're tackling, it's all about user experience. Again, throw all the tech terms out the window, forget about what tools we're going to use, get our business units to talk about the user experience, and just not the buyer. It's also internally, it's our account teams, it's the way in which we service our business. Get them talking about their experience, what they hate doing, and and that's how we're going to ideate and find ways in which we can improve the user experience. As I mentioned to you, I'm traveling. I'm sitting actually in a co-working space right now. The beauty of technology and the way we work these days. And we just previously been to a restaurant, and as I mentioned, it was this brew pub in Acworth, Georgia. And I was disappointed that I had to have a podcast because I couldn't have a beer. But the cool thing about it, and it literally was just 40 minutes ago, we walked in and it was a whole new experience. They asked for my ID in case I was going to have a beer. Then they put a wristband on me. Then they said, okay, we're going to take your card and we're going to swipe it. And they gave me this plastic card that said, this card is going to accumulate all of your charges today. So when you order your food, if you want a beer, you can go up to the wall, stick the card in and pour out your own. And then when you're done, if you're satisfied and you would like to, if 20% is okay with you, take this card, drop it in the box and head on out. So, I mean, what in user experience when you're dining, what's the biggest pain in the neck? You can't get a drink quick enough. And when you want to leave, you're looking for the waitress or waiter to give you the bill so you can pay it. And that's always the 15 minutes where you're like, kids are blowing up. You need to get them out. And so that's was the experience that I had today. And I'll give a shout out to it. It was called Red Top Brewing out here in Ackworth, Georgia. That's the experience I had today, and it was cool. And this is a restaurant rethinking the way they do. So I look for companies like that all the time that I can emulate and saying, what did they do differently? What was the reaction from the people, the buyer, and how can we take that same philosophy and bring it into the world?
I mean, I think it's the best way to approach it and it's, again, it gets back to what you're saying, which is putting yourself in that customer's point of view. And insurance, I think in the past, there's been, especially around claims, a big dependency on breakage. Someone won't report it, or even when you're sitting around and you have to wait for your check, I think they hope you're going to order another beer or do this. Right. You don't realize that there's this frustration that goes into like, I don't even want to go back there. I don't ever want to deal with that again. And you make a change versus making it convenient. I don't think they're giving up anything. I think they're creating that efficiency.
Yeah, and don't be worried about what the initial reaction is. My initial reaction is like, what's going on? This is weird, right? Because it's not what I was. And then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, so you're always going to have that when you're making change. I think that first reaction is, this isn't the same. And maybe there's some buyers that's not a good thing for, but for us, it's like, okay, it's not the same, but is it better? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the Steve Jobs approach, right? Which is like, you have to tell the customers sometimes what they want. Like they don't know what they want because they haven't had the chance to. Any one of us would have, I think even when it comes to data sharing, a few years ago, you had said to me, hey, like swab your DNA, put it into a thing, set it off, and you don't know where it's going to go. Someone could sell it. Who knows? I'm like, there's no way. Now it's like, well, I'll tell you where your grandmother came from. I'm like, oh, sure. Here you go. Right. And it's like a little bit of value. You get more data. You get that. It's an interesting balance of giving customers a little bit. Yeah, it is.
Sure. Yeah.
It really is. Well, this has been great. There were a couple audience questions I was able to kind of weave in there, and I so appreciate you coming on. And I'm not sure if there's anything that I might have missed that you wanted to hit on, but we have a great partnership. So I really thought it was just a great opportunity to pull you on and pick your brain a little bit more.
Yeah, no, the only thing I'll say to the audience, the folks that might have saying, how do we make this happen? How do we start things? I don't think you need to go and like reinvent the world overnight. Try to find some new business models where you can test things on and generate data and then bring that back into your business. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to be patient, but you also have to be persistent and hopefully, again, be a champion for change. You kind of talked at the beginning, beat the drum for your organization. Because the world's moving in this direction. There's not a question of like, will digital stick? I mean, like there's proof of concept everywhere. So you got to figure it out. And the only way is to start trying. So
you're right. It's like you can't boil the ocean. It's like you gotta start on that path and and be a what if thinker a little bit, or at least have somebody in your organization who's challenging it, which is critical. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. And really definitely to stay tuned. We're going to have another episode of UNBIND coming up that we'll be sharing that information with you. And Mark, appreciate it. We will share a recording of the podcast with everybody afterwards. And there's the opportunity to follow up with any questions after this. So thanks, everybody.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.